Hello and welcome to the very first episode of the Ski Instructor podcast. My name's Dave Burrows. I am the director, owner of SnowPros Ski School. We're based in the Port du Soleil, and the purpose really of this podcast series is to interview interesting people from the world of ski instruction. So I'll be interviewing a series of people over the following week, people with different ideas about skiing or might be doing something innovative in our industry, and that's really the purpose of this. So without further ado, I introduce to you Phil Smith of Snoworks based in Tignes, and I had a chance to sit down with him and have a very nice conversation with him when he was at the Welsh Championships in Tignes just last week. So here we go. All right, I'm here with Phil Smith, Snoworks. How are you?
Pretty good. Had an amazing day. Oh my God, there's been so much snow. Absolutely fantastic. So it's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be with you, Dave.
Well, welcome to my part of the world. I live just down the road in Valdilier. I'm looking out now onto the beautiful Dent de Midi. The sun's going down. Looking out over the Stade, Le Crozet. And conditions are fantastic today, aren't you? So you are here, as I understand it, you're here for the Welsh Championships. You have your boys downstairs?
We have three boys we've come across. Well, we've got a bit of a team here. We've got our own three boys, Luca, Freddie and Zach. And we always come to the Welsh Championships because Robin Kellan, who runs the Welsh Snow Sports Association, is a good friend. Mm-hmm. And it's great to come across and support him. And I used to work here as well, a long time ago. So it's great to come back to somewhere I worked in my early 20s. Lovely to be here.
Early 20s, okay. So here we go. So last night I was up at 2 a.m. because I thought, okay, I'm interviewing Phil tomorrow. So I've got a bit of a mind map here and lots of topics. So topic one, we might as well start with this: the old days. Now, why I wanted to talk to you about the old days was because you know when all of that Simon Butler stuff was going on, when it was causing a lot of social media storm, if you like, amongst the Basie crowd. I remember you posting a couple of things here and there that was about the old days when, let's say, the rules weren't quite so defined as they were. You know, we were talking about Eurotest rules and all of that sort of thing. In the old days, as I understand it, there were a couple of you pioneers that came here to France, just set up ski schools and got on with it.
That's right, we did.
I would love to know more about that.
Well, there's some very interesting stories, but we were born into Europe, and in our sort of late teens, what would have that been? 1978. I think my first winters were in 1978. But just prior to that, there were lots of tour operators working. The school tour operators at schools abroad. Mm-hmm. I know they don't exist now, but or they've been changed. You know, the names have changed. They've been brought over. But schools abroad, Hormont, Skibound, those were the main school operators, and they were bringing lots and lots of children across to France and Italy, other European resorts. And at the time, a lot of these school tour operators were struggling with the service that was being provided in the resorts. So they believed that they could go out and they could employ British ski instructors and bring them out. So it's more like, like Club Mediterranean, you have the instructors that come in that stay in the hotel, that see all the school kids in the evening. They run extra activities in the hotel. So there was
like
a big
interski.
Exactly, there was a bit interski. Exactly, there was a big market for British ski instructors at the time. And of course, Britain had its qualifications, France had its qualifications, Italy had their qualifications, but at the time there was no system of mutual recognition at all. Mm-hmm. So everybody seemed to be in the frame of mind that we could move around quite freely. Okay. It was a united Europe, and one of the main things about being in a united Europe, as we all know, was the free movement of the workforce. So these tour operators started bringing in their own ski instructors. At the time, the Basie level, well, it was in the reverse. In
there's 1, 2, 3.
Basie
right?
level 3, 2, and 1 was the highest. So a lot of Basie level 3s, and it was booming. It was absolutely booming. But at the time, everybody was quite happy with it. I mean, France were very busy. All the French ski instructors were very busy. And actually, not many people knew this, but France could not keep up with the demand for lessons. So France was having to employ lots of ski instructors that did not actually meet their own regulations. Come Christmas, New Year, half term, Easter. So there weren't, basically in the late 70s, early 80s, and the mid 80s, there weren't enough ski instructors to go around.
Okay.
So everybody was working quite happily. All the French ski instructors were working, the Italians were working, and the Brits were coming over and working.
And they were cool with that at that time?
Absolutely cool, because you can't go and stop somebody from working when your own house is not in order.
No,
as such.
Yeah.
So there was a blind eye turned to it. But then what happened, I have to get my dates right, it was probably around the late 80s. The training of French ski instructors had caught up with the demand for lessons. Okay. So they got their own house into order. They were able to meet the demand for lessons. So it meant that only the French ski instructors with the appropriate qualifications, considered by the Je ne sais sport, could go out and teach. So they had to get their own house in order. And then once they did that, then they started to stop other countries from working because they felt that they didn't have the right qualifications to work, which is a very interesting story.
Yeah, and how did and at that time, presume so you were right in the thick of it at that time.
Yeah, we were right in the thick of it.
And how did that manifest itself?
So what happened? Basie had its own system of training ski instructors, which was excellent, and it's catered for the British demand very, very well. Like most countries in the world, there was a 3 or 4 tier system at the time. Basically, a 3-tier system. Your level 3 introduction to skiing, up to sort of intermediates. Level 2 intermediate skiing, up to advanced, and level 1 obviously advanced race training and stuff like that. But the French believed that you needed to have a qualification that matched theirs.
Okay.
And that is what was the crux of the matter. So it was a difficult period because the French authorities wanted to stop the British ski instruction and other nationalities from working, but they themselves and Europe did not have any form of recognition. Didn't exist. So we were pioneering recognition. It just didn't exist. So it was not possible to stop people from working. You can't go and stop people in Europe and say, well, you need a French qualification. That isn't in the spirit of the European Union. But that's what they started to do. They started to stop people and say, you can't work because you haven't got a French qualification. Well, they knew that wasn't going to stand up in a court of law, because it would go all the way to Europe. So the British ski instructors started to prevent British ski instructors from working, which meant at that point authorities needed to get together. So the French and the British authorities needed to get together to negotiate equivalence. Just prior to that, myself and a couple of other ski instructors decided that this is Europe and Basie qualifications should be recognised throughout Europe. So we set up a ski school. We set up a ski school. And we had to, there was 3 of us, myself, Ian McKellar, not far from here.
No, I know.
And Hugh Money, not far from here. So the 3 of us set up a ski school.
And that was a French, a business in France?
No, it wasn't.
So it was a British ski school, but operating
it was
abroad.
a British ski school operating in France. It was a British ski school operating in France. And we were prepared to take it all the way to the European courts. We had to fund that ourselves. And so what happened, we had a European lawyer who was very interested in the case, obviously. So we took on a European lawyer and we started to fund that case. It was going to go through to the European courts for full recognition of all 3 levels, basically level 3, 2, 1. But the authorities decided to get together quickly and try to form a mutual recognition where everybody would agree the levels, which is pretty complex to do.
Trying to head you off at the pass.
Sort of, but we've got some other issues which cropped up, and one is a cultural issue, and the way that ski instructors are trained. So if you take British ski instructors, now we have 4 levels, level 1, 2, 3, 4, and that works very well for Britain. America, CSIA, Canadian Ski Instructors Alliance, they all have 3 or 4 levels. France only has 1 level, fully qualified. That's right. And prior to that, it's trainee ski instructors. Right. So it was quite difficult to fit a 2-tier system. We just say, it's only a 1-tier system, really. Trainee ski instructor and fully qualified, and get equivalence with a 4-tier system, where your lowest tier, the level, in Britain it would be the level 2, is recognised as a competent ski instructor. So the countries didn't match. So it became quite complex. There were a lot of people that felt that Britain should have pushed for full recognition of their whole structure, and other people felt when you're going into another country, even if it's in Europe, that there are cultural differences that you have to try to work with. So obviously people were split in their beliefs on that, and remain split to this day, I believe.
I have to say, I've spent enough time living in France and Switzerland to kind of understand their position, and my understanding of their position is, we were, if I'm a Swiss, or I'm a French guy who's born in one of these mountain villages, you grow up, you're doing race club, you're doing ski club, whatever, and for you, things like the Eurotest aren't necessarily that difficult to achieve, or within reason, if you've come through at a decent level through ski club. But it's also a question of tradition, especially with regards to the École Ski Français. They really, and also the École Ski Suisse. Certainly, that red jacket means a lot to them culturally. And in addition, there's a question of continuing employment. What do these guys do in the winter if all of a sudden the market is flooded with guys from Poland or Romania or whatever, in a similar way to you see happens to the market for plumbers and builders and whatever in the UK. And I think that's their fear, is that if they don't keep fear. That.
I think there's 2 things. One is, as you rightly stated, that culturally there are club de sports with young children at school who join the race club, and they are getting to a high level of racing. They move into regional squads, and then from the regional racing to the national racing, there's a high dropout. And then so the journey splits at that point. You've got the young racers who ski to an incredibly high level that then move towards ski instructing or security de piste, and then you've got the racers that continue towards the French team. So this system has worked very well for local people in the ski resorts
for an incredibly long time.
Exactly, for a very long time. Which means the local children that don't make it into earning a living in ski racing can branch off into ski teaching and earn a living in ski teaching. So we understand that, and but as you said, this happens in the UK as well. We have towns, villages, cities, people come in. You have your shop, you may have been born in that town, but somebody from outside is going to set up a shop next to you. So the British mentality is to compete. The British mentality is to compete. Okay, I've got competition, I'm going to need to make my product better to survive. So that's the difference culturally.
You're right.
British people compete for their business. Whereas the French culture is you train, you get your qualification, and you have a right to work.
Absolutely.
So there's a big difference, and hence the reason why Europe has been a very difficult journey for some countries like Britain.
That's hugely interesting, because I've also had I read something similar to that. It's a sort of Anglophone culture thing. If you're American or you're British, it's kind of, aggressive. We're looking forward to tomorrow. What can we do? What's next? It doesn't work like that here. They live for the day.
They work hard for their qualifications.
For sure.
And they, the French qualification as a ski instructor is very difficult to get. They work hard for it, and they feel once they've got that qualification, they've earned the right to teach.
And let's not forget that they only get a couple of cracks at the Euro tests a year. And if you I've seen those guys in the hut, and they're under a lot of pressure, for sure. And I understand it.
But there are people also in the that run French ski schools that have a different mindset. They see the British model, 4-tier system. They like it. Because the French model is is very pro the instructor. It's very difficult to run a business in France.
Yes.
Very difficult to run a business in France.
I hear that.
So, but if you're a worker, you can earn a good living. Okay, in Britain, it's the business owners that earn the best living.
That's right.
So, it's obviously a difficult balance. There's a clash, as we know, of cultures.
Absolutely. And I think that's a lot of what it comes down to.
And it's just understanding both sides.
Yeah.
And then trying to, if you can, trying to get middle ground. I always felt with the French British scenario of ski teaching, both sides needed to try to find a middle ground. But for many people that wasn't the idea. Britain has got qualifications. They've got a structure that suited them. They felt they were in Europe. They felt that their qualifications should be accepted throughout Europe. And that's the European ideal. But with countries with such different structures, the European Union itself has had difficulty trying to find a solution to this issue.
Oh, for sure. And you're full-time in team, is that right? So you go, because I feel that the guys who live out here all year round understand this cultural difference slightly better, as opposed to, say, the ski school guys that come and go.
I think we understand local people. But
you see how it all kind of interrelates. The guy that you see on the slopes is also the guy that maybe you get round to do your roof or something like that. And I've noticed certainly that up here in these small mountain villages, it's very, very important to play a bit more of a political game. When I was younger, I'd be kind of I would do that Anglophone thing. If someone crossed you, you'd go for them kind of thing. But I think as you get older and wiser and you spend more time up here, you realise that it's important to kind of keep everybody on side. It works better that way. Life works better. I think
so, very much so. You can have rules and regulations and laws, but at the end of the day, you have to get on with people. It doesn't matter what the law is. You're moving into a small mountain village. You've got to get on with those people. You want acceptance. So if you can find a way of working with local people, it just makes it much easier for everybody. And why not? Most of the resorts we go to where we do our travelling courses, we work with local people. Like when we go to St Anton, we work with the Aalborg Ski School. So we work with them. So our arrangement with the Aalborg Ski School is we work 50-50. I have 50% of our ski instructors, and I employ 50% of their ski guides, their mountain guides, and we work together on the off-piste courses. When we go to Chile, I use a local Chilean company. When we go to Spain, I use a Spanish mountain guide to work with their instructors. When we go to Japan, I use a local Japanese mountain guide, and so on. You can do, and it makes sense. These guys know the mountains. So if you can create local relationships, it's good news for everybody. Really, so as you say, I think in the early days, a bit hot-headed. Arrive, I've got my paper, I've got the work I've got the right to work, and it doesn't matter. I'm just going to get my clients and I'm going to teach, and that's it. But you have to get on with people. You've got to get on with people. So it's only as you sort of get a little bit older and a bit wiser, I think you learn that developing relationships is the way forwards.
No, I hear you. I've still got a lot to learn in that respect. Okay, well, let's use that as a nice segue. So you look like you've got some great... the direction of your business, you do a lot of the traditional things. So you teach skiing. We'll come to philosophy later because I'm hugely interested in the way that you think about skiing. But it looks like you have plenty of options where you take clients and you travel with them, which I think is a great idea. Tell me a little bit more about that. Well, how that came about.
Yeah, we started. I mean, again, it's going back in history. When we first started it, everyone skied on piste. Just the people that lived in the mountains skied off piste. We skied off piste as instructors. Right, we've got half an hour at lunchtime. Let's go and do that off piste route off the back, or a day at the weekend, let's go off-piste skiing.
It's a bit harder then. The skis were like 2 metres 20 long straight.
My slalom skis were 203. So you had, really, to ski off-piste, you had to really live in the mountains. So the market, there wasn't much market for off-piste skiing. And then, everybody remember this, snowboarding came along. And snowboarding just transformed the whole market. We owe a big thanks to snowboarders.
Yeah.
Because they were just having so much fun.
Well,
so much fun, and they could travel places.
Yes.
So, and skiing was losing out. There's made no bones about it. The ski manufacturers going, hang on a minute, what's going on here? People were switching to snowboarding. It's more fun, less rules, less regulations. Didn't have to snowboard a particular way. Skiing at the time with ski schools, the way ski instructors worked with their clients, it was very regimented, very fixed. There was national identities were taught. If you went to France, you skied the French way. If you went to Austria, you skied the Austrian way, and so on. So, whereas these guys just strapped a plank on their feet and went off and had so much fun. So, I don't know if you remember the first off-piste skis. I think it was Rosnell Bandit came along. Rosnell Bandit. At the time, if you look at it now,
No,
it looks antique, but at the time it was revolutionary. Wide skis, over 80. In fact, I think the Rosnell Bandit was 74 millimeters underfoot, something like that. Most skis were around about 67.
Yeah.
So 74, 75. I think it might have even been 80.
Yeah.
I can't remember, but 80 millimetres underfoot, that was a fat ski.
Big ski, yeah. Do you know, I've got a funny story about the Bandit. There's a guy who, what's his name? Duncan someone. He's a naval architect. Anyway, he rocked up on the level 4, the Basie level 4, and he's an amazing skier. Duncan, if you're listening to this, I've forgotten your surname. But it was hilarious. Every day he turned up with a different pair of skis. And one of the days he turned up with his wife's pair of Rosnell Bandits on for the level 4. And his examiner was Jim Lister. And it was hilarious. Like, he turned up and the guy was like, Jim said to him, when are you going to take this exam seriously? And it's like, well, I'm ripping on these bandits.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like 25 years old, but I'm still doing it. It's like, yeah.
So the next day, recent then?
Well, it was fairly recent. Yeah, it was honestly, it was a scream. And but the next day, he turned up on a pair of 193 GS race skis. And he was like, well, these do. It was a scream.
Fantastic.
But anyway, so go on, carry on. You're Russian old bands.
So the ski manufacturers started to make wider skis, basically.
Yeah.
And they were going shorter, more cut to them. Obviously, side cuts came in, and we started to notice a shift in the market. There was an interesting stage where we had people turning up on courses with fat modern skis with big side cuts short in the same group as people with skis 2 meters, 65 mil underfoot, straight, absolutely straight. And I don't know if you remember back. I remember vividly the World Cup ski racing. Now I can't remember the exact date. This happened, but I remember racers turning up to races with 2 sets of skis, an old straight ski and a new shorter calf ski, not knowing which ones to use. Yeah. And there was one season where we had this crossover. So we all had to get through that. I remember buying, I bought 8 sets of blades.
Yeah.
Right, short 1 meter blades.
Yeah.
And I bought 8 sets of what was called a Rosnell Power Air at the time, which was about a 160, big fat ski with a huge side cut. Okay. And we would take all our clients out on these skis, and we just everything that we'd ever learned as ski instructors was going out the window. Yeah, bank over, inside hand on the ground, ski, feet wide, just get big edge angles, the skis coming around quickly. It was a revolution in skiing. And that was a particular year. And that just went on from there. Suddenly, people were finding skis that they could start to venture off-piste.
Yes.
So we started to develop our first, what we called all-terrain courses, where we're doing intro off-piste. And then that developed into off-piste courses, which were an out-and-out off-piste course, which, we hadn't done before. So, and our associations weren't training ski instructors of how to teach off-piste.
And
because that wasn't the market.
And did that lead to the travel then?
Yeah, and then what happened, from the off-piste we started to move into backcountry, where we wanted to go over the backside of the mountain, into much further away from the resort boundaries. And then we looked at travelling, so we started to bring in exotic places. We went to Chile, Argentina, southern Chile and Argentina, into small ski stations which are on the side of volcanoes. We went to Kashmir, obviously Japan, Turkey. And the main thing about the travelling, it wasn't just about the skiing. It was about culture. It was meeting local people. Amazing trips, and that's continued. So we've got this whole program of what we called adventure skiing. Now this year, for example, we've got Japan, we've got Norway, we've got Iceland, we have Kyrgyzstan, we have Turkey, and still the southern volcanoes in Chile in the summer.
We're racking up the air miles. It's interesting that, because I've said that to a few people lately. You get that question often. People say, what's the best ski resort you ever skied in? And I've often tried to answer that question, but for me, as with a lot of other things in life, you think about good meals you've had and whatnot, it's actually about the people you're with and the time you have. So I've got some great memories of being in certain places at certain times. And I'm sure skiing's like that. It's an individual sport, but there's a social element to it too. If you're out with your buddies and you happen to be, you could be anywhere, you could be in these small resorts. Like yesterday, I was in La Dole, which is just on the other side of Geneva. I had a great time. Small resort, one lift hill, but the people you're with is what makes it. It's not necessarily like, you've got to be in a certain place with a certain name. I'm convinced of that. Convinced it's about the people you're with and the experience that you have. 100%.
Definitely. And people ring me up and they say, what's the snow like in Chile? So it's white and it's slippery.
When you slide on it, right? It's fine.
You don't go to southern Chile to ski the same snow as you could get in a resort just down the road in Europe. You go to Chile for the experience, it's the people, the company. To meet Chilean people, to learn about their culture, to go up mountains and ski places which are completely different. And it's the same in Japan. Everywhere that you go, Kashmir, it's an amazing Gulmarg in Kashmir. What a destination to go to. The adventure skiing is completely different, and it suits particular people where the experience is everything. The experience is everything. Because if you just want to ski, then jump on an EasyJet flight and get out to Europe quickly and get to a resort close by and get skiing. But if you want an experience, an unforgettable experience which is going to last a lifetime, I'm going to get on that plane and go to Chile or Kyrgyzstan or Kashmir or Japan.
That's good, because it was one of my topics that says, what are you doing that's different from other ski schools? What are you're not just teaching skiing day after day. What are the other things that you're doing? And this is clearly part of that.
What we did a long time ago, I actually went to our clients and said, why do they come skiing with us? And I really asked them that, please, if you can spend half an hour, list the reasons why you come skiing with us. And it divided quite neatly into 3 areas, the feedback was. And those 3 areas were quite equal. One was to improve. The other, which you've already mentioned, is to ski with like-minded skiers at a similar level, so you can travel around the mountain together and experience the mountains together. And the third was to go places where you wouldn't go by yourself. So for local knowledge and experiential. So we've got learning, we've got experiential, and we've got social reasons. And that splits quite equally.
And so that's what's led you off into the various.
So we try to cater for those 3 needs. People that want to improve, that's their main focus. But of course to get better. People that want to go skiing with other people, because what it's like in Britain. If you reach a particular level of skiing, sometimes it's difficult to find people to go with. Everybody's got busy jobs. They've got families or whatever. It's quite difficult to find people to go with. So if you can then go with a company that you will be immediately be an environment where there's other people that ski the same level, that have the same aspirations, the same desires. Bang, you're in. So it's more of a sort of a club setup.
That's cool.
And then the third area is more of a safety issue, which is, you don't go up to the top of the mountain, look over the back to untracked off-piste and go down it by yourself.
No, for sure.
Yeah, so, these people want to go off the back of the mountain. They want to put skins on and go ski touring and access amazing off-piste areas, but they want to do it with somebody that knows the area.
Yeah.
That will keep them safe.
Yeah, for sure.
So, so we try to hit all those three areas with our program.
Okay.
Very much so.
That's interesting. Okay, good. Well, let's move on, because I think that's really, really. I like that. I like that idea, and I don't think probably enough businesses do that. I did it at the end of last year. I did it in a slightly different way. In that you go to your customers and you say, you ask them the questions that they want answering. For example, last year. So last year I asked all of our clients. I said, I asked them specific questions, not necessarily I asked them the usual questions. You happy with what we've done? Blah blah blah. I asked them some very interesting questions to do with who notices our marketing. What is the gender of the person who notices our marketing? Who is the gender of the person who makes the decision? Is it a joint decision? Is it the person? Is it a family decision? Hugely interesting information to see actually where your clients come from, who decision makers are within those units, and that it's. I think I can't imagine that some of the more traditional schools around here are doing that kind of thing.
I don't think so, no. I think the concept of a ski school is you arrive and get a lesson.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the concept. And interesting enough, although the market is changing, I'm sure that most associations, most governing bodies that train ski instructors are looking at the market and thinking, are we changing with the market? Are we looking, what do our customers want? What do ski instructors need to deliver these days? How do they work with their clients? Is it a case of just standing in front of a group and giving some technical information, some technical advice? Or is it more than that?
You'd hope the associations are doing that. You'd hope so. It's interesting it'll be interesting to see how they do evolve in that respect.
We've got some great models in the British Association of Ski Instructors, Snow Sports Instructors, some great models. One of those Mostyn's teaching styles, based on decision making. Yeah. Who makes the decisions? And ski instructor in the early days was very command led. The client skis down, the instructor looks at them, they tell the client what to do, how to do it, when to do it. The client does it, and the instructor gives them feedback to say whether they're doing it correctly or not.
That's right. Yeah. Classic loop. Yeah.
So command style, but the learner-led lessons, and in your business as well as mine, when we run private sessions which are learner-led, it's fantastic. The client arrives, I say to the client, what can I do for you?
It often blows my mind. I was up just the other side of that hill about 2 weeks ago with a group of my adults who all know each other, and they'll come up and ski with me, and they seem to be conditioned to want that old school command approach.
Yes.
I said, well, why don't you guys just work together? You go down and do that, watch each other or something. Try and I can't remember what the official. I try not to use the official kind of Beezy words or whatever. But the just trying to get them to think about their skiing in a different way, or teach them in a different style. And you'd be just sort of. You ask them a question about something. What do you think about this? They're just nothing. Just absolutely nothing. Well, like, come on, you guys, come on. This is a two-way process. We're not. I'm not just going to stand here and bark information at you, because it's not really what. There's other ways to do that kind of thing.
Yeah. People will go back to education. How children are taught in school. And as we know, there's a big move to change education. Yeah. If you look at some of the Scandinavian countries, their educational system for children is very different to the standard approach to education in the UK and in France as well, because our kids did go to school in France, although we worked out private arrangements for them now. but it's very command style. It's very teacher led.
Yeah.
You know, the pupil arrives at school, they're told what they're going to do, they're told how to do it, and then the work is corrected.
Yeah.
So discovery learning is gradually erased from them. You know, we know children like to learn by discovery. That's how they learn.
That's right. You see it all the time, don't you?
But by the time children arrive at adulthood, quite often that process of discovery has been lost.
I'm a relatively new father. You've been down this road before, and much more experienced than I am. But I'm a new father, and I greatly believe in the value of the child trying to work stuff out for themselves. Totally. The struggle is important. They have to have the struggle because it's how you overcome things in the future. Your life isn't always going to be put to you on a plate. You've got to, you can guide them in the right way, but they've still got to. There's a huge value in terms of coming to the answer yourself, as opposed to someone just feeding it to you on a spoon. I think that's hugely
very
important.
Very much so. You know, we're facilitators of learning. You know, ski instructors facilitate learning, but as you say, you know, we're going through this period in education where people arrive for lessons, and their perception of a lesson is to be told what to do. You know, not to be taught how to learn.
Yeah.
You know, hang on, I don't want to go through this process of being shown how to learn. Just tell me what I've got to do.
Yeah.
Of course, we know learning is not as simple as being told what to do. You know, we can guide people. Certainly we can come in and say, right, you know, try this here. You know, but which will bring us back, I'm sure we'll get into this discussion in a minute, which is about the mountain environment.
Yes.
And how that affects the way that we teach. But, you know, having good discovery skills, having what I call a good divergent approach to learning is an absolutely essential in skiing because of the nature of the sport, because it's so variable and so changeable. And coming on to one of our favourite topics, which is learning open skills for an open environment. And you need a very divergent approach to do that. So divergent learning, you know, and discovery learning, and as far as skiing is concerned, to become a really high-level skier, you know, you have to get involved in this kind of learning for sure. Otherwise, you will just plateau.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. Hi, it's Dave Burrows again. So very interesting podcast so far. It's really interesting to hear Phil talk about some of the history of the early days of ski instructing, especially in around this part of the world where he was. And then in the second half we go on to discuss very interesting philosophy that he sort of works by in terms of open and closed environment. And then one of the biggest things that I got out of this at the end, which was to do with judged and measured performance. So I found that super interesting, and I hope that you find that interesting coming up. Enjoy the rest of the podcast, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye. All right. Well, let's segue nicely into the technique aspect. You did I'm sure someone interviewed you recently. I saw you on a video somewhere.
Planet Ski and J2 Ski.
That's right. Yeah. And I saw you talking about your sort of own philosophy. And I've got a little Saturday club that I wouldn't say has a similar philosophy, but the philosophy is whatever the mountain gives us on any given day, we will go and learn the techniques to manage that. I'm not going to give you one specific way of skiing. We're going to go and, you know, do what we need to do to adapt to those conditions. And I think personally, when you learn in that way, it makes you a much, much better skier, for example, for when those kids go and ski for the school, or they go and do something like that in gates or something. They've got a broader range of skills at their disposal, other than those kids that have just raced gates. How does that compare to what you are teaching your clients?
Very, very much along the same lines. I'd love to claim it as our own philosophy. I really would.
I don't think anyone owns anything to
No. Quite often we put catchy terms to things, and so that we can market them and give people a tool for understanding. So we particularly use the term going open and working with open environments, and it's a very interesting subject because we had to get involved in studying other sports. So we looked at other sports and the nature of other sports, and we started to term the sports as open or closed, or a mixture between the two. Okay. So we have this sort of spectrum of sport. One end, sports are very open, and one end, sports are very closed. Many people in sport will be familiar with those terms anyway, but many people that come in skiing are not familiar with those terms, so it's quite important to understand them. So very, very quickly, so an open sport is where the environment is changing all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, so everything's changing, it's never the same.
So ski racing could be classified as that quite easily.
Could be, yeah. But so that people would understand, take it to some other sports which are incredibly open, so that's rugby or football. If you're playing a football match, once that football game kicks off, no one's ever in the same position twice.
No, that's right.
Everything changes all the time. The ball moves completely differently all the time. It's never kicked the same distance or the same amount or has the same spin on it. The tackles, people tackling. So that is an incredibly open sport. So all team games are open sports because not only do you have your own team members who are always changing, and you might get tactics to sort of have an understanding of how you're going to play, but you've got no idea how the other team's going to play.
No. Yeah.
And then you've got, so that's team sports, but you've also got sports like surfing, where the waves, no wave is ever the same, unless you're in a wave machine. No wave is ever the same. It always breaks differently, the height, the speed of the break, and things like that. You've got other sports which involve the weather, like windsurfing, sailing. So the wind is never the same. So lots of these sports, they're very, very open. And at the other end of the spectrum, you've got closed, where the environment remains the same. The environment, so you've got no other team members, you've got no opposition, and the environment is constant. So let's take running in lanes, indoor running in lanes. Would be closed. Or swimming in lanes. Swimming in lanes is a closed sport. You've also got some highly technical closed sports, like figure skating. Singles figure skating. I mean, pairs figure skating, they'll try to close down. Because you need to know what your partner's doing, obviously. And then you've got high diving, gymnastics. These are all very skillful sports, incredibly skillful, but they're closed. So now what differentiates open and closed is how we perform in open and closed sports. And there's some key differences. So in a sport when the environment is changing, as you mentioned about the mountain, you have to change with it. You've got to change with the environment. So your movement patterns are completely variable. You might make a movement pattern, and that movement pattern will never be repeated again. It's a one-off. It's a one-off movement pattern. Like playing football or going in for a rugby tackle. There might be rugby tackles that are similar, but none are identical.
No.
So the movement patterns are varied all the time, depending on the environment that you're meeting. So, whereas in a closed sport, the movement patterns are similar. So a front crawl is a front crawl. A breaststroke is a breaststroke, back crawl, butterfly, butterfly. No one confuses those strokes.
No.
They don't get mixed up. So a butterfly is clearly a butterfly stroke.
But within that sport, there is scope for them to, what's the word? I keep saying this, is perfection more. Like you can repeat that movement until you've got it so down that you're the fastest you can possibly be.
So it's a completely different way of working. You hone your skill. That skill is repeated and repeated and repeated. It might become more accurate, more efficient, until it's the best it can be. But it's a honed skill which is repeated. Whereas in an open environment, there are no skills that are identical or nearly identical. You know, the variability is immense. But there's also decision making. So we've got two things. One of the movement patterns, open is variable, close is repetitive to a certain extent, whereas the decision making is key as well. And this is absolute key. In open sport, decision making is instantaneous. You're having to make decisions on the move while stuff is happening to you.
Yeah.
In a close,
as the picture changes in front of you. Yeah.
As it changes in front of you. In a closed sport, the decision making is predetermined. You already know what you're going to do before you do it, because nothing's going to affect your performance.
No.
So you go through this mindset, right? This is what I'm going to do. You know,
I'm just going to execute that to the best of my ability. Yeah.
So a high dive, and you'll see everybody going through their mindset with a high dive, or the ski jumping, the gymnastics. Everybody's going through that mindset, their routine before they do it, so then they can go and execute it. Now, the interesting thing is, just to move on a little bit, when we ask our clients, we go through this about open and closed sport, give some examples, how they consider skiing to be. Everybody says open.
Okay.
Everybody. When I ask the same clients their perception of how they learnt to ski, everybody says closed.
All right. Okay.
Right. So we got a system which is built around closed sport in an environment which is clearly an open sport.
Very much so.
Hence, we have in skiing something which has been there for many, 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 many years, which people talk about, which is called the intermediate plateau.
Okay.
Now, I have never heard of an intermediate plateau in football, or rugby, or squash. I've never heard of an intermediate plateau. But the intermediate plateau is something in my years, when I was learning ski instructor, it used to be talked about all the time. Oh yes, I've hit the intermediate plateau. Now, why is that? Why do people hit an intermediate plateau? Well, it's clear the intermediate plateau exists when the environment becomes more open. Okay, so it's sort of the tricky red run, black run stage.
It's almost like the skills that they've learned in a certain fixed environment have run out.
Exactly. Now, I mean, you can learn, okay, we know we've got piece machines, we know when they go out at night time, they're going to piece the nursery slopes, they're going to piece the blue runs, green runs are going to get pieced, the blue runs will get pieced next. Then, if they've got time and it hasn't snowed, probably most of the red runs, but not all of them, and they may have to leave the black runs. Okay, so this is where the mountain, for most skiers going on holiday, moves from what we would call closed to open.
And the blue runs essentially stay in reasonable condition because they're not too steep. Yeah. And you get to red runs, that's when they start to lump up snow, and you get
ice,
sort of moguls,
ice. You know, they're narrow. They haven't been bulldozed in the summer, so the grading changes a lot. So there's a lot of variables. So if people are learning a fairly repetitive movement pattern in the early stages of skiing, that will get them through to the sort of red run stage. But difficult red runs, they're going to plateau out unless people can still because skiing isn't just about having good skills technically. The mental approach. So if people are very fit and have a good positive mental approach, even if they learnt in a fairly mechanical way, a fairly repetitive movement pattern, they can still probably hammer through and get down most things. Like if you've got a square peg and you want to put it into a round hole, if you hit it hard enough, it will still go in. Okay, so some people, but nervous people that want control rather than bravery, they will plateau because suddenly the techniques they've learned don't match the environment. Exactly as you said on your Saturday club. Let's see what the mountain's got. How are we going to work with the mountain today? So that was key in our philosophy. Okay. Open skills for an open environment.
I like that. I like that a lot. It's clever. But within that framework, you're still teaching skiing, right? Are you still? Absolutely. So you're not in the because. How do I explain this? You're not in that open closed. It's such a kind of a different concept. part of me sort of said, in the back of his mind, say, "Oh, this guy's just an old hippie. He's going to be next. He's going to tell me to be the ski or something like that." But I don't think it's that, is it? You're saying, right? Because when you're up here, let's say you've got a guy who is, on top of the fairly steep stad that we can see here, and you still have to teach him which movements work and what to deploy at what time, so that he can ski that to the best. So you're not, it's not completely earthy.
No, I prefer to think of it as skill-based development rather than manoeuvre-based skiing, or skill-based skiing rather than manoeuvre-based skiing. I think that might sum it up for people. Okay. So let's take a particular skill. I mean, in our own association, we've got these skills. It's all the skills that everybody needs are within the structure of the British Association of Snow Sports instructors, for example. So if we take one skill, like let's take edge control. Edge control. Well, there you have it. It's edge control. So you would learn the ability to control the edges of your skis. Now, as we know, edge control is infinitely variable. The amount of edge that you use, how quickly you use your edges, how long you use them for. Whether you use one ski or two skis. So there's a huge amount of variation. So the key is to develop edge control. And then we've got the rotary control, so we learn to rotate our skis. Again, infinitely variable, the amount of rotation, the speed of rotation. Rotate one ski, both skis. And then in our association, I mean, we use some different terms in our own organisation, but they use pressure control. Yeah. So the pressure control, infinitely variable, different ways of applying pressure. How much pressure, lots, little, how long do you hold it for? And then the blending of those three skills, rotary control, pressure control and edge control, is infinite. So each one of those is infinitely variable in itself, and as you put the three together, they're infinitely variable.
For me, I'm often drawing graphs in the snow, bar charts almost, because I think the part of it is the why. Why would I use certain things on that slope over there? Why would I want quite a lot of rotation and not much pressure and a little bit more of edge here and there? Why would I do that? And for me, making that connection in the client's mind between what they're faced with and why or what they should use at any given time, you make that connection, all of a sudden a lot of the anxiety to do with skiing goes away, I've noticed.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got the skills, and we know that the mountain is so open that if we take those three skills that we've just spoken about, edge control, rotary control and pressure control, different parts of the mountain need a different emphasis on each of those skills. So, and if clients haven't learned them, then they haven't got the skill. It's like
it's often the knowledge gap that is actually
the knowledge gap. I think that's absolutely key. When you do a PADI course, in scuba diving, people have to have knowledge. The instructor just doesn't jump in the water. All
he wouldn't catch me jumping in.
Let's have a go. Yeah. I mean, the first part of a PADI course is in the classroom.
Yeah.
It's in the classroom. So knowledge is power sometimes. So just to understand that there's three mechanisms that you need to, three general mechanisms that you need to learn to steer your skis. You need to learn pressure control skills, you need to learn edge control skills, and you need to learn rotary skills. I've had numerous conversations. I mean, things are changing, but I remember going back in the time, and I remember an instructor from a particular country coming to me and said, "Phil, this you call it twisting." Yeah. Why do you do that? Why do you get your clients to twist skis? And I remember saying to him, well, because they need to be able to get around the mountain. Yeah. And he said, but you don't use twisting. Because he was from a manoeuvre-based association. This is going back quite some time. So I said, well, how do you stop at a drag lift? He said, what? What do you mean? You just stop.
You just stop. You just do it.
Well, you do this perfect parallel turn into the drag lift queue. Of course you don't. Yeah. Everybody uses twisting. So we had this conflict. You know how ski instructors were trained.
Yes.
It's very manoeuvre based. You ski down, you demonstrated manoeuvre. And that obviously, if you've just been assessed on your manoeuvres and your demonstrations, you're going to think that's what ski teaching is. Yeah. So you go out and teach your clients how you were assessed.
Yeah.
You're actually teaching your clients to pass the ski instructor exam. You're not actually teaching them how to ski.
I think there's a lot of people out there doing
that.
Right
they do that.
They don't make the connection between the deeper understanding of skiing and passing that on.
That's exactly it. Yeah, it's it's completely different, and I think ski instructor assessments have to change. I'm sure they're already changing, but I think in order to get a more individual approach, more client-led approach to learning, then the way ski instructors are assessed needs to be looked at as well.
Couldn't agree with you.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree
Very
with you.
much so.
I've been, we haven't discussed this yet, but I've recently been through the Swiss system. I've kind of translated all of their textbooks into into English and back into French for various reasons. But the long story short is the Swiss, I think, sometimes are still a little bit stuck in a very formulaic way of doing things. If you look at their books, for example, that they use, the Red League stuff that probably you were still using back in the day, they're all very like, oh, if you can perform this, and this, you get this medal. And I think there's a bit more to it than that. It's about passing on that understanding to your clients, so that when they're caught in a situation, tick box drills in a book is not going to solve their problem when they're stuck up there.
Exactly.
What's going to solve their problem when they're stuck up there is an understanding of what they should do and when they should do it, when they should deploy these skills. I think that's my personal philosophy behind it anyway.
Absolutely. And ski instructors are, their assessment, they are assessed on specific criteria, and it's often technical criteria.
It's, in my opinion, it's too technical. Well, you've got to be able to ski at a certain level.
Yeah,
I grant you that. But the levels that we have to ski at to pass those exams are way, way in advance of the majority of the times the clients that we ski in front of.
Yeah, we have to question ourselves,
But I would be, I'm in all of these things. I've never seen enough focus on teaching and understanding. Never.
No. It's almost as though if you ski to a high enough level, you can become a ski instructor. Yeah. So, but that's historically. Obviously, as you stated before, there is safety issues involved. And we are in going back to the terminology we used before. We are skiing in a very open environment. So, ski instructors have to be able to ski to a particular level. Which is different to, we've got this thing with coaching. Like a swimming coach. When was the last time? I remember learning to swim. I never saw the swimming coach jump in the water and show me how to do it. When you're in a more closed environment, often the coach is standing at the side. In fact, I remember one of my greatest ski coaches, because I was a racer as well. I never saw ski.
Ah.
Yeah, he went around a skidoo or what are those? Went down on a skidoo or something like that, and he would be either be at the top of the course, halfway down, or at the bottom. I never actually saw him ski. I didn't even know if he could ski.
But he was good enough to translate his ideas.
Amazing words of wisdom. And that's what I remember. I didn't need to. Let's face it. When you're a ski racer, are you actually going to watch your coach?
Often. I've got a few. I've got some young kids now. I was just over in Villa. I was telling you earlier. Some of the kids that I was going through the park, and they can do tricks.
Of course, amazing.
I couldn't do that. And there comes a point when you, as a coach, where your client becomes better than you.
Totally.
And you have to kind of be humble enough to accept that and say, okay, well, I can still see what I can see. I can still kind of make improvements to you, but I can't demonstrate that whole picture to you because you are better than me now. And I think that's a hugely interesting thing.
There has to be a level of competence, especially in our business, because we're mostly off-piste skiing. So all our staff have to be able to ski to a very high level.
Yes.
So we've gone into that market. So our instructors and coaches and guides, they have to have a high level of performance because they're backcountry, they're off-piste. You've got to be able to move around the off-piste quickly, safely. So they have to ski to a good level. You can see why there is a high emphasis on technical performance for ski instructors because they're out in the mountain environment. But I still think, exactly as you said, that does there need to be a higher level of focus on the teaching skills.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And more.
And the
emphasis on
technical skills we
understanding
should
and
really
how it
just
all
take
links
for
together.
granted.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they should be there, right?
Yeah.
But definitely in all of the time that I was going through Basie and also then into the Swiss side, I just don't think there's enough emphasis on teaching.
No,
There isn't,
no.
and that is
Basie is leading the field, though. I think.
Yeah.
Having split into when they split into a modular system, and they developed their teaching modules. And I was involved in Basie at that time, and those teaching modules have a very good content.
Yeah.
Whether it's coming across, whether it's been delivered, whether it's been used, whether it's been assessed correctly, whether there's enough importance being placed on it, but the actual content is very, very good. It's there. So it's there.
No, and it's
to be
valued. It's
used,
valued
yeah.
amongst all the Swiss
Yeah.
schools around here that are taking on British guys. They get good feedback from their teaching.
I think because British ski instructors, we haven't come from an alpine background, we haven't gone through club de sports, we haven't become ski racers, so we're much more familiar with the mindset of a learner.
Oh, I couldn't agree. Oh my god! Yeah, I've been banging on about this to anyone that will listen. If you are a French or a Swiss, you learn at 2 years old.
Yes, exactly.
You're on skis, or Italian or whatever, but you don't know what it's like to be me when I was 14 years old and I learned to ski. I know what it's like to be rubbish. And these guys don't. I have no idea.
No, they were just really good,
Born on
like,
skis.
from 2.5
And
years
so
old.
they don't have an empathy with, let's say, you, the client, who's finding it difficult. Because it's like, well, why can't you do it?
Well, as you say, they were born with skis in their feet, so it's natural as walking.
It's hugely
Yeah,
interesting that point.
Yeah.
That empathy isn't there, and I mentioned that to my
And it's
guys.
the
at
same in
start of the
football,
season.
isn't it? If we look at football coaching, some of the top football coaches now are not coming from a background of being a top-class footballer
Absolutely
themselves.
not, yeah.
And they are being valued, whereas in the old days, to be a top-class football manager or football coach, you had to have competed at a high level yourself.
It's true.
That's changing in football, and ski racing still has that. To be a top coach, not so much in America,
No.
because they're more into discovery and learning and coaching. They're more into the philosophies that we're talking about, that we're discussing here. But at a European level, because they're used to high performance. If you are coaching racing, well, then you must have been a good racer yourself.
You see it all the time in the ski clubs, don't you?
Yeah,
All the guys who are running ski clubs are ex racers
Ex-racers,
themselves.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Ex-racers.
And all they're doing is I'm sure there are some that are doing more, and there's some very, very good coaches around here. But a lot of what those guys are doing is what was passed on to them from their coaches.
Just
and they're
regurgitated again. Yeah,
No.
it takes a brave person to move outside the box. It takes somebody who has, that they want to move outside the box. They want to learn stuff, not just repeat what they were taught.
Yeah.
It takes a brave person to do that. Yeah.
All right, I got two more, but I realise that you've got kids upstairs playing pool. The first one, this is interesting because I think this could lead somewhere with the podcast in general. Who, in your opinion, is also doing interesting stuff within our industry that I should speak to? Can you think of anyone?
Right. Well,
Hopefully they're already on my list, but
you've got people doing different stuff. We had for example, when we first went to St Anton, there was a lot of resistance for us going there, and the Arlberg ski school was resistant for people coming into St Anton from the outside. But I went and I met the director of the Arlberg ski school.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I talked to him.
Yeah.
Suggested what we're going to do. Can we work in partnership together? Yeah, let's do that. And a few years later, the Arlberg ski school started their own powder club. So you're getting people that are being influenced for sure. Leaders. I can go back. Ali Ross in his time, was out there doing things completely different. Ali Ross is still teaching skiing.
Yeah.
In team. In fact, I have coffee every morning with Ali Ross before we go our separate ways with our clients. I mean, Ali Ross, I would say, was probably the first person within Basie to move outside of the Basie organisation and start to do his own things. So Ali is still, there doing stuff. I would really, one of my main influences, without doubt, was John Shedden.
Okay.
John Shedden was the director of coaching for SnowSports England, and he was a Basie trainer. Not many people know that he was a Basie trainer. He wasn't happy with the manoeuvre-based teaching, as we've already spoken about. So he had to move out of the association. He became director of coaching for the SnowSports England, and he made he really tried to push the difference between coaching and instructing. So it was all about coaching, working with clients, developing a skill-based model rather than a manoeuvre-based model. So definitely go and, John Shedden, I know, is still around. He advises a lot of Olympic associations. He's brought in as a consultant. Dennis Edwards was a Basie trainer. Dennis was the coach of the SnowSports England ski team for a long time. He moved into coaching other sports. He's out there still. Dennis Edwards is definitely to interview. So John Shedden, Dennis Edwards, Ali Ross is still teaching skiing. From a skiing point of view, I think you'd have to have a nose around to see, anybody that's breaking the mould, that's moving into other areas. Yourself.
Well, I don't know about that. We'll see. But interview myself.
Yourself.
I might know a man who can do that.
We had a little bit of a chat before this podcast, talking about how you're working and stuff like that. You've got ski scores, but people that are breaking the mold. I mean, ski scores still following the traditional route. You've got Warren Smith.
That's true.
Warren is based over in Verbier. He wanted to. He was very involved in free riding. So I know that's quite tricky how that crosses into teaching people on holiday. And a love of free riding, to see how he blends his balance between a love of free riding and working with clients.
It's true.
On the mountain.
He's got an interesting club model, hasn't he? So
he has he has very specific philosophies about how he works with people as well. I know he does. I've seen him at a lot of ski shows. So we've got Warren, we've got Hugh Money. Hugh Money, who founded the British Alpine Ski School. Hugh is definitely an interesting person to talk to. Hugh runs, off the top of the British Alpine Ski School, he runs his own ski performance clinics, very sort of tailored ski performance clinics. So he's definitely worth talking to. There's a lot of younger ski instructors coming through, who are moving into interesting areas. There's Simon Christie. In the not Port Slay, I'm in the Port Slay here. Simon Christie in the Three Valleys. He's a ski instructor, has moved more into off-piste. So he just skis off-piste all the time. He's working with clients in an off-piste environment similar to us. So there are definitely people out there for sure. A lot of people.
All right.
For sure.
Good. Well, my mind map is almost, I'd say it's pretty much done. Thank you. Would you like to give, I want to make sure that everyone who comes on gives up their time, gets a bit of a plug-in for what they're doing. Is there anything you'd like specifically to mention? Or?
Well, I would just say, going back to those three things about skiing with like-minded skiers, experiential learning, travelling the world looking for amazing places, but also for people that have, for one reason or another, feel that they are not improving. Now, why would somebody not improve? You have to ask that question. Why? I mean, because improving should be a natural development. We get better. It's a human thing.
That's right.
You do something, you get better at it. But we know a lot of people are getting stuck in their skiing. That's why they go for lessons, to try to break out of that. And I would just say to anybody listening to this podcast, think of how skiing is. We talked about the open and closed environments. Think about your perception of skiing. Try to understand open sport, where the environment is changing all the time, and then try to understand is that how you are skiing? Are you skiing in an open way, or are you skiing in a closed way, which is a very repetitive, movement-based way of skiing? Are you free to develop your own individual style? Because being involved in open sport, you're free to develop your own way of skiing.
That's right.
So you ski your own way. I've got loads more stories about that. Not at this time.
We'll put that for podcast number 2.
Another time.
Yeah,
but you got to, you need creativity. You need to be individual. This is absolutely key. And as you know, with ski instructor training, people are often taught to ski a particular way. So everybody's skiing the same way.
Robots.
And then that moves into people being taught in ski schools. They're all being taught to ski in a very robotic fashion to fit into the model that the governing body has created. I'm hoping that's changed, and it's changing. But everybody should be developing their own individual way of skiing. So if you've if you got stuck in your skiing, there's a reason, and it often revolves around the open-closed scenario.
I try to give my instructors that freedom. I say to them at the start of the season, there's no prescriptive way in our ski school to teach. I'm not going to tell you how to teach your clients. You know what you know, and you've got your own ideas about how things work, and I want you to translate those into good sessions. I'm not going to say to you the client's arms have to be here or here, or they have to push in or whatever in a certain way. You do whatever works, teach what is in front of you. And that freedom gives good
and it's
reviews.
worth just mentioning one other philosophy which is very strong in our organisation, which is judged and measured performance. And we're very focused on that. Again, we might have a little session at the start of looking at judged and measured sports. Judged sports like gymnastics, figure skating, for example, compared with diving, high diving, compared with measured sports, which is how much you lift, how fast you run
against the clock.
Against the clock, it's measured. And we try to get people understanding the difference between judged and measured sports, which is absolutely key. And then I ask them, how do they feel skiing? And most people will say it's judged.
Who's judging?
The instructor. Whereas if you say we measure performance, can you get down and run in control? Can you cope with ice? Can you descend? An off-piste slope in control. Can you go down the centre of mogul field? Can you select moguls that you can ski in control and get down? So and this is a big mindset because people, and when you're judged, you become very self-conscious. Sure. So this will hit home with a lot of people that might be listening to this podcast. Are you self-conscious? When you ski, are you self-conscious of how you ski? If you are, you're involved in a judged sport. Turn it into a measured sport and your self-consciousness will disappear completely, because it's all about getting down the mountain in control, and skiing in control. It's not about how you look, or it's not about adhering to somebody else's viewpoint. And so we talk about a lot of judged and measured sport.
That is very interesting. I'm glad, even just for that little snippet, I'm glad we had this conversation. That's fantastic.
We often say, just think of another sport that takes place, 2 sports which take place on a similar surface and use similar equipment: figure skating and ice hockey. They both take place on ice. They both use ice skates, and they're completely different sports. If you've been trained as a figure skater, can you imagine playing ice hockey? And if you've been trained as an ice hockey player, can you imagine going into a figure skating contest?
Wow. having been formerly married to a figure skater, I can tell you it wrecks your head, that whole concept of judgment.
Is your perception of skiing figure skating or ice hockey? Now for us, all mountain skiing is definitely in the ice hockey bracket because it's an open sport. So we're teaching people to become ice hockey players with skis on their feet.
Wow.
Whereas I don't want to take anything away from figure skating because amazing. But it's, as it comes back to this open and closed stuff. Figure skating is closed, very skillful, amazingly skillful. Ice hockey is open, as skillful, just very, very different.
Very good. Where can people find out more information about what you do?
Well, they can just go straight onto the internet. We have our site, www.snowworks.com. So straight on Snoworks. We also have numerous Facebook pages, Twitter, Instagram. So just Snoworks, SNOW.
W. I was going to say there's only one W, people.
Oh,
There's
okay,
one
yes,
W.
yeah, not it's Snowworks with one W in the middle.
Perfect.
And if you want to learn open, that's the place to come.
I've had a fantastic discussion with you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Excellent.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And hope we'll enjoy your time here in
Pleasure
Crosets.
to chat.
Great. Thank you.